My name is Naomi Brooks. I'm 35 years old, and the moment everything in my life finally made sense was the exact same moment I realized I had been preparing to walk away long before I ever admitted it to myself. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just precisely. I work as a senior accountant for a medical equipment distributor. My world is built on numbers, systems, clean reconciliations, things that behave the way they're supposed to. Problems have steps. Solutions have structure. There's comfort in that. Control. For a long time, I believed relationships could work the same way. Adrian Cole was the opposite of me in every way that felt exciting at first. Warm, expressive, magnetic. The kind of man who could walk into a room full of strangers and leave with half of them laughing and the other half remembering his name. He was a photographer. Creative. Impulsive, always chasing the next moment that might turn into something bigger. I was steady. He was fire. He used to call me his anchor. I used to call him my spark. And for a while, that balance felt real. I supported him. More than supported, actually. I built around him. I helped design his website. I converted our spare room into a studio. I paid $2,400 for a replacement camera body when his broke before peak season. I covered extra bills when his bookings dipped because he promised things would even out once momentum picked up. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. The problem didn't start all at once. It crept in slowly, disguised as ambition. Adrian became obsessed with hosting a major gallery launch before our wedding. Not a small event, not something manageable. A full production. Industrial loft venue. Catered food, styled florals. Gift bags, live music. Every time he described it, the vision got bigger, and the numbers got worse. I told him the same thing every time. After the wedding, we can plan it properly. Not no. Just not now. We had $18,700 in our wedding account. Most of that was mine. We still had final vendor payments, flights, moving costs, first month's rent on the townhouse we planned to lease after the wedding. I wasn't rejecting his dream. I was protecting our reality. Adrian didn't hear it that way. To him, every question I asked about budget meant I didn't understand passion. Every concern meant I was afraid of risk. Every suggestion to scale down meant I was trying to make him smaller. And then last Thursday, everything snapped. I was in a meeting when my phone buzzed with a fraud alert. My backup credit card. The one I barely used. First charge, $4,860 to Foundry Loft Events. Then 3 more, all within the hour.
Catering. Lighting. Music.
Pending total, $8,870. Every single vendor, one Adrian had mentioned for his launch. I didn't panic. I froze the card. Then I drove home. The binder was sitting on the kitchen island, like it belonged there. Gold script across the front. Adrian Cole Studio, launch night. I opened it. Inside was a venue contract listing me as the financial guarantor. My name. Not my signature. On the next page, a 6-month studio sublease. Also in my name. Also not my signature. Adrian walked in carrying takeout like it was any other evening. Like he hadn't just detonated something we couldn't rebuild. I asked one question. Did you use my card? He didn't answer it. Not directly. He started talking about timing, about momentum, about how creatives lose their window when they wait for cautious people to feel safe. I asked again, did you use my card and sign my name? That's when he got annoyed. Not defensive. Not guilty. Annoyed. Like I was missing the point. According to Adrian, the problem wasn't what he had done. The problem was that I was focusing on it. He said this event would change everything. He said once people saw his work in the right space, bookings would explode. He said I was reducing something meaningful into numbers on a screen. And then he said it. Slowly. Clearly. Like he thought I needed help understanding. If you loved my passion, you'd put it on your card. I actually asked him to repeat it. He did. Without hesitation. He said we were getting married anyway, that everything would be shared soon, that real partners invest in each other. He said I wanted a safe, boring life because ambition made me uncomfortable. And in that moment, something inside me went completely still. Not angry, not emotional, just clear. Love isn't a business plan, I said. And I meant it. Not as a line, as a decision. I took the binder, my laptop, and my phone into my office and called my cousin Drew. He's a business attorney. I explained everything. He didn't hesitate. 3 things, he said. Fast, freeze everything, save everything, move your money. So I did. The card was already locked. Next was the wedding account. 2 transfers had already gone to Adrian's business account. $2,500 the week before. $1,800 3 days later. No conversation. No explanation. Just gone. I transferred back the $13,600 I had contributed, left the rest. Then I emailed our venue, florist, and planner. Wedding canceled. All communication through me. That cost me $3,200 venue deposit, $850 floral retainer, $430 in invitations. Still cheaper than marrying someone who thought my name was a funding source. Adrian followed me around the condo while I worked. At first, he said I was overreacting. Then he said I was misunderstanding. Then he said I was sabotaging our future. Finally, he said, people do reckless things for passion all the time, and the only reason I couldn't understand that was because I'd never built anything from the heart. He was wrong. I had built something. Boundaries. I just hadn't realized I needed them with him. By midnight, I was packing. His clothes, his equipment, his things. Boxes lined up by the door. I left the high-value gear alone. I had receipts. Drew told me not to complicate anything. That's when he started crying. You're ending 4 years because I believed in myself? I looked at him. Really looked. And for the first time, I didn't see the man I loved. I saw someone who believed belief was permission. No, I said quietly. I'm ending it because you believed in yourself enough to steal from me. He left just after 1 a.m. to stay with his friend Kelsey. I changed the garage code before I went to bed. The wedding was over. And so was the man I thought I knew. It's been 5 days. 5 days since I canceled the wedding. 5 days since Adrian walked out with 2 boxes of clothes, his laptop, and the kind of wounded expression people use when they want you to forget what they did and focus only on how badly they feel about being caught. The first wave didn't come from him. It came from everyone around him. Kelsey texted first. Then 2 groomsmen. Then his cousin Paige. Then another photographer named Nico, who I'd met maybe 3 times, and who suddenly had very strong opinions about my character. Their messages all sounded different at first, but underneath they were the same script. You're punishing him for being brave. You're trying to destroy the one thing he cares about. Real partners support passion. I didn't answer. Not because I had nothing to say, because I finally understood that some conversations aren't meant to resolve anything. They're meant to pull you back into the room where someone else controls the lighting. Adrian emailed instead. Subject line: please stop escalating this. I opened it at my kitchen table with coffee going cold beside my laptop. The email was calm. Too calm. He wrote that the charges were never meant to hurt me, that he assumed I would calm down after the initial shock, that the lease paperwork was symbolic because once the launch succeeded, I'd understand why he had needed to move quickly.
Symbolic.
That word sat there like a stain. My name on a guarantor line was symbolic. My credit card charges were symbolic. My money leaving the wedding account was symbolic. Then came the part that almost made me laugh. He asked me to call Foundry Loft and say I had verbally approved the card and guarantor line, just to smooth things over while he figured out a better repayment plan. He put the lie request in writing. I forwarded it to Drew, then to the fraud investigator. The bank provisionally reversed the card charges, but because of the forged guarantor paperwork, I had to file a police report. So I did.
Calmly.
Statements. Screenshots. Timestamps. The binder. The email. Just facts. I used to think emotion made a story stronger. That week, I learned facts are louder when someone else is trying to drown the room in feeling. The next call came from Danielle, the venue manager at Foundry Loft. I expected tension. Instead, she sounded tired. Adrian had apparently been calling non-stop, telling her I was just scared of a big investment, that I would come around, that creative couples fought like this before big breakthroughs. Danielle didn't sound convinced. Their system showed the contract had been completed on an iPad at the front desk during an in-person tour. There was a timestamp. A partial lobby camera still. The ID Adrian used that day. Only Adrian was visible when the guarantor field was signed. He had literally stood alone in their lobby and signed my name. Danielle emailed me the logs and image. I saved everything. That same afternoon, Adrian's mother, Renee, called. I almost didn't answer. I expected yelling, accusations, another speech about how he was sensitive, misunderstood, under pressure. But Renee's voice was small, tired in a way that sounded older than the situation. Naomi, she said, if you didn't approve this, don't you dare put your name on it to keep the peace. I didn't speak for a second. Then she told me something I should have known earlier. Adrian had done smaller versions of this before. Roommates.
Deposits.
Event fees. Borrowed money with dramatic deadlines and promises that success was just around the corner. There was always a story. Always a crisis. Always someone else expected to soften the landing. By the time we hung up, the air in my condo felt colder, but cleaner. This wasn't one mistake. It was a pattern. Saturday brought the porch scene. I was at the grocery store when my doorbell alert went off. Adrian was outside with Kelsey and another photographer. The front door was open. They were carrying out the large printer, 2 LED panels, and a hard case with lenses I had bought him last Christmas. For a second, I just stared at the screen in the frozen foods aisle, watching my former fiancé walk through my doorway like the life he'd lost still belonged to him. Then I called the building concierge. My voice was steady. Too steady. Lock the freight elevator, I said. They are not leaving with disputed property. By the time I got home, Adrian had already switched to tears. He stood in the lobby, holding one of the lens cases against his chest, like I was confiscating his future. You're holding my career hostage, he said. I pulled up receipts on my phone. Printer.
Panels. Lens kit.
All paid for by me. all in my name. Security told him he could take personal belongings only. He got clothes, his personal camera body, his laptop, and 2 boxes of prints. Everything else stayed. Kelsey glared at me like I was the villain in a story she had rehearsed before arriving. Adrian loaded the last box into her SUV, then leaned close enough that only I could hear him. "You're ruining the one thing I've ever loved." I looked at the boxes, then at him. "No," I said. "I'm refusing to finance it." He flinched, but not from guilt. From losing the audience. The strange part was that while Adrian's world got louder, mine started getting quieter. On Monday, my boss called me into her office. I expected concern, maybe pity. Instead, she thanked me for closing out the quarter cleanly in the middle of obvious personal chaos. Then she asked if I would lead a systems conversion project next month. Bigger role. Better bonus. More responsibility. For a moment, I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because Adrian's friends kept telling me I had destroyed my future, while my actual future was calmly opening doors I could finally walk through without dragging his chaos behind me. That night, I went home and stood in the spare room. The room I had painted for him. The walls still held faint marks where backdrops had been mounted. There was dust on the floor where light stands used to sit. One strip of painter's tape remained near the window, curled at the edge like it had been waiting for permission to let go. For 4 years, I had called that room support. Now, it looked like evidence. I didn't cry. Not then. I just opened the window and let cold air move through the room. For the first time in days, the condo didn't feel abandoned. It felt returned. And that scared me a little. Because relief is a strange emotion when you expect grief. It doesn't arrive gently. It arrives like an accusation. Like some quiet part of you whispering. You knew. You knew before the card alert. Before the forged signature. Before the binder on the kitchen island. You knew every time he turned your caution into cruelty. Every time his dream became your debt. Every time love was measured by how much damage you were willing to absorb. I stood there until the room got dark. Then I closed the window. I locked the door. And I saved one more folder on my laptop. Adrian evidence. Because by then, I understood something important. He wasn't finished. People like Adrian don't lose control and disappear quietly. They change tactics. Adrian didn't come back the way I expected. He didn't show up at my door with apologies or explanations. He showed up. Online. It started subtly. Black and white photos of himself, soft lighting, careful shadows across his face like he was the subject of his own grief. Captions about passion. About how people abandon you when you refuse to live small. About how vision makes others uncomfortable. He never used my name. He didn't have to. The comments filled in the blanks for him. You deserved better. He was never on your level. Some people are threatened by greatness. I screenshotted everything. Not because it hurt. Because it was strategy. Adrian wasn't talking to me anymore. He was building an audience. And audiences don't care about truth. They care about stories that feel right. A week later, he tried something different. Around 11 p.m., my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It was Kelsey. She said Adrian was at the studio building, spiraling, saying everything was over. She said he was talking about ruining his life, and that if I would just come down and sign the release paperwork, he would calm down. For a moment, I just stared at the message. Not because I believed it. Because I recognized it. Crisis as leverage. Emotion as bait. I didn't go. I called 911. requested a welfare check. The officers found Adrian exactly where Kelsey said he would be.
Calm.
With two friends. Setting up a styled shoot using rented furniture and borrowed florals. No breakdown. No emergency. Just another attempt to get me into a room where pressure could be applied in person. I saved the police note. Subject calm. No immediate threat observed. Even the wording felt tired. Like the situation had already repeated itself too many times. 2 days later, Adrian escalated. He showed up at my office. He was dressed like a version of himself I used to love. Tailored coat, clean lines, hair perfectly styled. The kind of presence that used to make me feel proud standing next to him. Now it just felt rehearsed. The receptionist called upstairs. "Your fiancé is here." I corrected her automatically. "Former fiancé. Please ask him to leave." He didn't. Security came down. Before they walked him out, he raised his voice just enough for people in the lobby to hear. "You're sabotaging my business," he said. "And withholding tax documents that belong to me." Neither was true. He had copies of everything. But truth wasn't the point. Audience was. The moment needed witnesses. He needed a version of the story that sounded convincing out loud. That afternoon, Drew sent him a cease and desist. No contact. No visits. No third-party pressure. No false claims. No requests involving my name. For a few days, things went quiet. Not peaceful. Just waiting. Then Morgan reached out. She had been one of Adrian's closest friends, a groomsman. Her message was short. "I think you need to see something." We met at a coffee shop near Wash Park. Morgan looked exhausted. Not dramatic, not emotional. Just done. She opened her phone and showed me screenshots from a group chat between Adrian and his friends. 2 weeks before everything blew up. Before the charges. Before the binder. Before the fraud alert. He was already talking about the launch like it was happening. Already planning how to handle me. "Naomi will freak at first," one message read. "But once the room is packed, she'll get over it." Another one. "Worst case, I cry and say she never believed in me." Nobody blames the artist in that situation. I read those messages twice. Then a third time. Not because I didn't understand them, because I needed to feel the absence of doubt settle completely. This wasn't desperation. It wasn't even impulse. It was planning. Careful.
Confident.
He hadn't been hoping I would support him. He had been counting on controlling the reaction after he forced the outcome. I thanked Morgan. She nodded once. "I didn't realize how far he'd go," she said quietly. Neither had I. But at least now, I understood the rules of the game he had been playing. By then, my life had started shifting in quieter ways. I had gone out twice with someone new. Ethan Carter. My sister introduced us. He's a pediatric nurse. Calm in a way that doesn't feel like performance. Easy to talk to. The kind of person who listens without turning your words into something about himself. There were no big declarations. No intensity. Just steady conversation. It felt unfamiliar and safe. Apparently, Adrian found out. Because the next escalation came in person. Last Saturday, Ethan and I were having dinner on a patio in Cherry Creek. It was quiet, warm, normal. The kind of evening that doesn't try to prove anything. Adrian walked straight up to the table. He was wearing the blue shirt from our engagement photos. Of course he was. He looked at Ethan, then at me, and smiled in a way that felt almost gentle. So this is why you ruined my life. I stood up immediately. Leave, I said. He ignored me. Started talking louder. About promises. About betrayal. About how I had chosen a safe, predictable life over someone with real fire. Ethan stayed seated.
Come.
He didn't interrupt. He didn't engage. And somehow, that made Adrian look worse. Because there was no conflict to perform against. No reaction to amplify. Just silence. Adrian reached into his jacket and placed an envelope on the table. "If you have any decency left," he said, "you'll sign this and stop humiliating me." I didn't touch it. I didn't look at it. I just turned to the manager, who had already started approaching. "He's harassing us," I said. "Please ask him to leave." Adrian backed up slowly, still talking, still trying to turn the moment into something bigger than it was. "You're going to regret making me the villain," he said. The police were called. Another report. Another statement. Another piece of documentation added to the folder. On Monday, Drew filed for a civil protection order. By then, we had everything. Doorbell footage. Office incident report. Welfare check record. Restaurant report. The forged contracts. The email asking me to lie. Morgan screenshots. The cease and desist, he ignored. It wasn't one story anymore. It was a pattern with evidence. What made it strange was how quiet my life became in the middle of all of it. I slept better. The condo stopped feeling tense. I moved my desk back into the spare room. Took down the last of his equipment hooks. Sold some unopened wedding decor. Bought a better chair. The space started looking like mine again. Not shared. Not negotiated. Just mine. And somewhere in that quiet, something settled into place. Adrian had spent weeks trying to pull me back into his version of reality. A place where emotion outranked facts. Where pressure replaced permission. Where love meant compliance. But the more he pushed, the clearer everything became. I wasn't the one who had changed. I was the one who had finally stopped adjusting. The hearing was scheduled for Friday morning. By then, everything had already settled into place in a way that didn't feel dramatic anymore, just inevitable. I woke up early, not because I was nervous, because I wanted the morning to be quiet. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, looked around the condo, the same space that had held arguments, plans, compromises, and a version of the future I had spent years building. It didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt neutral, like a place that had been returned to its original state after something temporary passed through it. Drew met me outside the courthouse. He didn't ask how I felt. He didn't need to. He just handed me a folder.
Clean. Organized. Indexed.
Every piece of evidence we had collected. Not a story.
A structure.
Inside the courtroom, Adrian was already there. Cream blazer, soft expression, shoulders slightly lowered, like he was carrying something fragile. I recognized the posture immediately. It wasn't grief. It was presentation. His attorney leaned into that narrative from the start. A talented creative under emotional strain. A relationship that collapsed under pressure. Miscommunication. Crossed wires, hurt feelings that spiraled into something bigger than it needed to be. If I hadn't lived through it, it might have sounded convincing. But Drew didn't respond emotionally. He stood, walked to the bench, and handed over the binder. Then he stepped back. No performance. No raised voice. Just facts. Bank statements. Contract logs from Foundry Loft. the venue's timestamp and lobby image, the forged guarantor paperwork, the email where Adrian asked me to lie, the cease and desist letter, the office incident report, the welfare check record, the restaurant report, Morgan's screenshots, each piece placed carefully into the same quiet narrative. Not what Adrian felt. What Adrian did. The judge spent a long time on the email. Longer on the group chat. There's something about seeing intention written down that removes any room for interpretation. Finally, he looked directly at Adrian. Did you have permission to use her card or sign her name? Adrian didn't hesitate. He said he believed he had implied permission because we were getting married. The silence in the room after that answer was complete. The judge didn't react immediately. He just let the weight of that statement settle. Then he asked why Adrian continued contacting me after the cease and desist. After multiple incidents where he had been told to stop. Adrian said he was trying to save the relationship and the business he had built around it. That answer landed exactly the same way. Because it wasn't about misunderstanding. It was about entitlement. The ruling didn't take long after that. Protection order granted. 1 year. No direct contact. No third-party contact. Stay away from my home. Stay away from my workplace. The legal language was simple.
Clear. Final.
Outside the courtroom, Adrian didn't look at me. For the first time since everything began, he had no audience left to perform for. The bank finalized their investigation the same week. Every disputed charge was cleared. Temporary reversals became permanent. Foundry Loft removed my name entirely from the guarantor paperwork after reviewing their logs and camera footage. Adrian's case was referred to the district attorney's office for the forged signature. His lawyer negotiated a pretrial diversion.
Restitution.
Mandatory financial counseling. No new charges for 12 months.
Consequences. Structured. Predictable.
The way things should have been from the beginning. The wedding was gone. Not postponed. Not salvaged. Gone. My final financial loss landed somewhere around $5,000.
Deposits. Invitations.
Suit alterations. A cabin reservation for a weekend that would never happen.
Annoying. Expensive.
Still a bargain. Because what I almost signed up for would have cost far more than money. Renee texted me after the hearing. You did the right thing, even if he hates you for it. I believed her. Not because I needed her validation. Because it matched the truth I had already settled into. Adrian didn't contact me again. Not directly. His social media went quiet for a week. Then it came back, softer. Less dramatic. Captions about healing. About growth. About choosing yourself. I didn't engage. I didn't need to. He could choose himself from several hundred feet away. My life moved forward in ways that didn't demand attention. Work got better. I was formally promoted to finance manager on the systems project starting next quarter. More responsibility. More clarity. More stability. Ethan and I kept seeing each other. Slowly. No pressure. No urgency. Just time. Last Sunday, he came over. We stood in the spare room, the one that used to be Adrian's studio. Now, it held my desk. Shelves. Order. Ethan looked around, then back at me. This place feels peaceful, he said. It does. And that's the part I didn't expect. Not the relief. Not the distance. The quiet. The way life got lighter the moment I stopped trying to prove that support and self-destruction were the same thing. Because they're not. I used to think passion justified everything. That if someone felt something deeply enough, it meant it mattered more. But passion without discipline isn't vision. It's impulse. Passion without honesty isn't ambition. It's manipulation. And love, real love, doesn't ask you to fund someone else's chaos. It doesn't ask you to lie. It doesn't ask you to sign your name onto something you didn't choose. Adrian kept saying I didn't understand his passion. What he meant was, I refused to be consumed by it. Supporting someone's dream is not the same as financing their delusion. And boundaries are not a lack of love. They're proof of it. So yes, I canceled the wedding. And looking back now, that was the most loving thing I've ever done for myself.